The best character in Warhammer lore is Trazyn the Infinite, from the incredible book The Infinite and the Divine. It's a book so good that I recommend it to non-Warhammer people. It was so good, and Trazyn is such an interesting character, that I decided to base my entire Necron army around him. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make the Blackstone Museum floor bases for the army. I knew right away that I wanted the bases to look like the floor of Trazyn's museum, which I learned from the book was made of Blackstone. Wait, what did that scarab just do? Magnets are wacky, huh? Anyway, I thought for a while about how to do Blackstone bases on a mass scale, and I remembered seeing a Miniac video where he made this sick pentagram base by sanding down a base until it was smooth. I decided that this was the best way to go, and after testing it out, I really liked the look, and locked it in as the base scheme for the entire army. It also kinda looks like the Ride the Lightning album cover, which is also sick. So to start off, I have to sand the bases down until they're smooth. I found that the best way to do this was to hold the base in one hand, and then use a hand sander in the other. I started out using 150 grit sandpaper, and got them all as smooth as I could. After that, I moved to finer grit sanding sticks that I had from my Gundam building days. I think I used 500 grit and 1000 grit sanding sticks. Once I had them as smooth as I could get them, it was time to prime them black. I've experimented with different types of black primer because I was curious if glossy black would look cool, but I found it was a little too distracting, so I recommend just using matte black. Anything from the hardware store will do. I'm using Krylon. I wound up using 2 coats of prime in order to help hide some of the spots that weren't completely smooth. After I gave them some time to dry, it was time to break out even more tools from my Gundam days. Paint markers. This made it so easy to draw straight white lines with. I just shook the marker up really well, then ran the marker along a ruler that I held against the bases at the angle that I wanted. Then I repeated that a bunch more times, each time coming at the base at a different angle. I'm going for very sharp angular tiles, so I'm using lots of lines coming at each other at different angles and avoiding the center of the base. The paint markers dripped off the side of the base in a few spots, but I just cleaned that up using some black paint. Once the paint has dried, we can bust out our airbrush and spray some blue paint along the white lines. This creates an effect where the center of the line is bright and the overspray from the airbrush creates a subtle fade into the black. I found that it was best to give each base some time to dry in between each pass with the airbrush, so I'm only spraying 1 or 2 lines on the first pass, and then coming back in to paint the other lines that run over the top of them after the first lines have had time to dry. I also kind of spray a little along the edges and did my best to kind of blend everything together. You also want to keep your airbrush moving and avoid spraying any sections that are still wet, because this will make your paint run and streak. And that's really all there is to the bases. I hot glued some magnets to the underside to make them easy to transport, and then glued my models back onto them using super glue. I'd already painted these guys up and just needed to make bases for them, but I'll be showing you how I paint my Necrons in a future video. One more quick little project I'll show you is how I solved the issue of flight stands. My Transcendent Catan comes on a flight stand, but I wanted to do something a little different with him. I decided to make a little Blackstone obelisk to kind of blend into the base and hide the flight stand. To do that, I cut a little piece of XPS foam and then coated it with black paint mixed with Mod Podge. After that, I glued the obelisk to the center of the base with super glue, cleaning up the excess with a Q-tip. Then I edge highlighted with dark gray blue, then did a second edge highlight with blue. Finally, to affix the Catan to the obelisk, I glued a paperclip into a hole I drilled in the Catan's base, and then superglued that paperclip into the obelisk. I think it looks pretty good, but I think that for the next one I'll be using more condensed XPS foam to create a smoother finish. Well, now that I've got the rest of my army based up, it's time to pack them up and go play a game. My buddies and I are playing a 2v1, they're Acadians and World Eaters against my Necrons. It's a pretty weird matchup, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how it goes. I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial on how I make the bases for my Necrons. Feel free to let me know if you think they look like Blackstone in the comments. I think they do a pretty good job of conveying that, but they also do remind me of those old school photo backgrounds from the 90s. At least they're unique. Alright, thanks again for watching, and I hope you subscribe so you can stay tuned for the next one. Bye bye for now. Also, we won our game!